I was reading, and I came across a text of J.K. Rowling's speech that she gave to the graduating class of Harvard 2008. And I'm not particularly her fan. I went to one or two of the Harry Potter movies, and I was mediocre. I wasn't very interested. And I haven't read the book, but that doesn't say much about the talent and the incredible work that this lady has done and what she has gone through. You see, my respect or liking for a person or admiration for a person doesn't really rely on just their work, because there are so many different types of work that exist in the world, and they benefit people in one way or another. And it may not directly touch me, but it doesn't mean that it's not good. So I don't judge a person, or I don't judge or admire or not admire a person based on if they've done something that's good for me or that I like or that fits my interest. It's more about their ability to go through a lot of vicissitudes in life and difficulties and hardships, and also to come out on top, to do what they believe they should be doing. I think that if we do things that we don't believe in much and we still come out on top, I think in a way we didn't really come out on top. So I think we need to really do what we need to do or what we believe in, no matter what the difficulties are. So I came across her speech and I found it full of wisdom. A lot of wonderful advice that people such as Gandhi, Buddha, Christ, great Greek philosophers, Chinese scholars have been saying for thousands of years. And I guess wisdom is wisdom, no matter whose mouth it comes from. Anyways, I wanted to post this on a blog, and I wanted to write a little bit of my thoughts about her speech. And then I realized that, I'm not a very good writer, so I didn't want to attempt to comment or write something that she wrote that she spoke that's so good and ruin it. And also I thought I don't want to get into writing so much, because it would be quite a loss. So I thought I'll talk about her speech. I'm going to read her speech to you, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. And I would like all my blog friends and blog people and students and Kichara and everybody in the world who needs to hear something that has been said millions of times over, that still rings true, that still is filled with wisdom. And if we can embrace this wisdom now, we would overcome so much of our problems and so much of our difficulties and so much of our mental claustrophobia that we have created for ourselves. And I always think to myself, why do people, including me, have to live in this type of claustrophobia? You see, if we're going to be around for 10, 20,000 years, we have time to play, to explain, to justify, to examine, and to overcome. But we're not going to be here for 20,000 years. We're going to be here, if we're lucky, 80 years, if that's considered lucky. And why would we want to spend 30, 20, 40, 60 years realizing who we are, what we can do, and some of the barriers that we put up, and some of the games that we play with ourselves to protect, inverted commas, protect ourselves? So I don't understand why someone who would live to be about 80 spend 20, 30, 40, 50 years exploring and then overcoming and then perhaps doing something. And that has boggled me since I was very, very young. Even before I studied Dharma intently, why people make themselves and people around them unhappy when it's not necessary, when all that time will pass. And I've seen so much in my growing up days of people who make each other unhappy, and now they're dead. And when they died quite unhappily. Some of us may believe in reincarnation, some of us may not be. but we need to believe in the here and now. And why do we need to make each other unhappy in the here and now? Anyways, this is what I wrote as an introduction to my blog for her speech, and I wanted to read it to you. Dear blog friends, I came across this speech by J.K. Rowling, author of Harry Potter, and I was amazed. There's much wisdom, Dharma, insight, and very beneficial advice if we embrace it. Reading it has helped me today. I will read it again and again from time to time. I really liked it. I wanted to post this because I wanted all my friends to read the wisdom it contains. I was just thinking about all the kind of friends I had that if they can realize what this says, it would help them. I wanted to post this because I wanted all my friends to read the wisdom it contains. It is not in any context except coming from a person who has championed against the many vicissitudes of life. It reaffirms my beliefs that struggles and harshness makes a person win eventually. Difficulties shape a person's strength they do not know they had sometimes. Vicissitudes in the end becomes the best teacher, and embrace it. I didn't say enjoy it, but embrace, learn, and don't get swallowed up by it. But move on. Moving on is learning. Avoiding difficulties puts you back into mental complacency and claustrophobic states that only gets bigger with time. What Ms. Rowling said is not dry or boring or academic. It is full of wisdom. But to read and be inspired for the day is not enough. To read and shed a tear or to say how the lights came on, in my mind, is not the purpose of this post. The purpose is to help you liberate you from you, I sincerely hope, and me, to help you overcome your fears to move on. Fear never really goes away, but why hold on to old fears? Old fears, when overcome, makes you stronger to challenge bigger and more worthy fears that need to be conquered for success. Yes, for success. Who does not want success? Who does not want to succeed? Why do some people become mentally unstable? Perhaps fear of not succeeding or not achieving what they set out to do? Maybe. I can only hypothesize. Some even opt out to disappear and go away. Why? They are not running away because of you, but because of the glint of their potential you show them, that they are afraid of this potential. Why afraid? Because they know there will be failures before the rainbow, and they don't focus on the rainbow. I decided to do a reading on tape and post it here. I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, wish to share this with all of you. I am not a fan of Harry Potter's. I did not enjoy the movies much. I did not read the book, nor do I intend to. But I admire and respect the author. You see, just because I do not particularly favor her work does not mean it is not excellent, which it is. Her work is excellent. Miss Rowling is excellent. Her fortitude to do what she dreams after decades of struggle and humiliation rings terribly loud in my head. I respect her so much for doing what she wants to do against what society says she has to do. She didn't fight society, her parents, or her poverty. She didn't enjoy her poverty, but she saw the worth in it. She saw who she is today is what she embraced of herself in the past. Embracing the past should not be future tense. I repeat, embracing the past should not be future tense. Embracing yourself means to do what you need to do, no matter what the struggles are, what the difficulties you have to endure. Just do it. I wanted to repeat the last part of what I wrote up. And it says, she didn't enjoy her poverty, but she saw the worth in it. She saw who she is today is what she embraced of herself in the past. Embracing the past should not be future tense. Embracing yourself means to do what you need to do no matter what the struggles are, what the difficulties you have to endure. Just do it. That was my introduction to her speech. Her speech doesn't really need an introduction, but since I'm blogging it, I thought I'd give you some of my thoughts. And the speech is not very long, but I want everyone to please listen to it very carefully. Miss Rowling's entire speech, Harvard 2008. It was published in Harvard Gazette. It's online. President Faust, members of the Harvard Corporation and Board of Overseers, members of the faculty, proud parents, and above all, graduates. The first thing I would like to say is thank you. Not only has Harvard given me an extraordinary honor, but the weeks of fear and nausea I've endured at the thought of giving this commencement address have made me lose weight. A win-win situation. Now all I have to do is to take a deep breath, squint and read at the red banners and convince myself that I am the world's largest Gryffindor reunion. I'm at the world's largest Gryffindor reunion. Must be a character from her book. Delivering a commencement address is a great responsibility, or so I thought, until I cast my mind back to my own graduation. The commencement speaker that day was the distinguished British philosopher Baroness Mary Warnock. Reflecting on her speech has helped me enormously in writing this one, because it turns out that I can't remember a single word she had said. This liberating discovery enables me to proceed without any fear that I might inadvertently influence you to abandon promising careers in business, the law, or politics for the giddy delights of becoming a gay wizard. You see, if all you remember in the years to come is the gay wizard joke, I've come out ahead of Baroness Mary Warnock. Achievable goals, the first step to self-improvement. Actually, I have racked my mind and heart for what I sought to say to you today. I have asked myself what I wish I had known at my graduation and what important lessons I have learned in the 21 years that have expired between that day and this. I have come up with two answers. On this wonderful day when we are gathered together to celebrate your academic success, I have decided to talk to you about the benefits of failure. I repeat, I have decided to talk to you about the benefits of failure. And as you stand on the threshold of what is sometimes called real life, I want to extol the crucial importance of imagination. These may seem quixotic or paradoxical choices, but please bear with me. Looking back at the 21-year-old that I was at graduation is a slightly uncomfortable experience for the 42-year-old that she has become. Let me repeat. Looking back at the 21-year-old that I was at graduation is a slightly uncomfortable experience for the 42-year-old that she has become. Half my lifetime ago, I was striking an uneasy balance between the ambition I had for myself and what those closest to me expected of me. I was convinced that the only thing I wanted to do ever was to write novels. However, my parents, both of whom came from impoverished backgrounds and neither of whom had been to college, took the view that my overactive imagination was an amusing personal quirk and that would never pay the mortgage or secure a pension. I know that the irony strikes with the force of a cartoon anvil now. So they hoped that I would take a vocational degree. I wanted to study English, literature. A compromise was reached that in retrospect satisfied nobody, and I went up to study modern languages. Hardly had my parents' car rounded the corner at the end of the road, then I ditched the German and scuttled down the classics corridor. I cannot remember telling my parents that I was studying classics. They might well have found out for the first time on graduation day. Of all the subjects on this planet, I think they would have been hard to put a name on one less useful than Greek mythology when it came to securing keys to an executive bathroom. Let me repeat that. I cannot remember telling my parents that I was studying the classics. They might well have found out for the first time on graduation day. Of all the subjects on this planet, I think they would have been hard put to name one less useful than Greek mythology when it came to securing the keys to an executive bathroom. I find that kind of entertaining because I've read so many biographies of successful people who've made it. Successful is, of course, subjective. Who've made it in life, who've done something of benefit for themselves and others. And the key factor is that they did what they wanted, not what society told them they should do. They did what they felt they should do, and what made them successful is not really what they did. It's the passion and the belief that they put into what they did that made them very successful. And it seems to be a very strong underlying key in success, as she mentions here. So how would Greek mythology give her the keys to an executive bathroom, the perks of an executive, the life of one that's so-called successful? She realized that early on. And then let me continue here, please. I would like to make it clear, in parentheses, that I do not blame my parents for their point of view. There is an expiry date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. I like that. There's an expiry date on blaming your parents. That's exactly what I feel. For all those people out there who are suffering and need counseling and help because of what your parents did to you, it's expired. Move on. Let me continue again. There is an expiry date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. The moment you are old enough to take the wheel, responsibility lies with you. What is more, I cannot criticize my parents for hoping what I would never experience poverty. They had been poor themselves, and I have since been poor, and I quite agree with them that it is not an ennobling experience. Poverty entails fear and stress and sometimes depression. It means 1,000 petty humiliations and hardships. Climbing out of poverty by your own efforts, that is indeed something on which to pride yourself. But poverty itself is romanticized only by fools. I like that. But poverty itself is romanticized only by fools. What I feared the most for myself at your age was not poverty, but failure. At your age, in spite of a distinct lack of motivation at the university, where I had spent far too long in a coffee bar writing stories and far too little time at lectures, I had a knack for passing examinations. And that, for years, had been the measure of success in my life and that of my peers. I find that quite funny, too, because, well, when I went to school, we had to go for the classes. But I didn't spend that much studying, but I did have a knack for passing tests, even for tests that I never studied up on. Let me continue. I am not dull enough to suppose that because you are young, gifted, and well-educated, you have never known hardship or heartbreak. Sorry, I skipped a part here. Let me go back. At your age, in spite of a distinct lack of motivation at a university, where I had spent far too long in a coffee bar writing stories and far too little time at lectures, I had a knack for passing examinations. And that, for years, had been the measure of success in my life and that of my peers, passing the examinations, that is. I am not dull enough to suppose that because you are young, gifted, and well-educated, you have never known hardship or heartbreak. Talent and intelligence never yet inoculated anyone against the caprices of fates. And I do not for a moment suppose that everyone here has enjoyed an existence of unruffled privilege and contentment. That's very deep. Let me go through that again. I am not dull enough to suppose that because you are young, gifted, and well-educated, you have never known hardship or heartbreak. Talent and intelligence never yet inoculated anyone against the caprice of the fates. And I do not for a moment suppose that everyone here has enjoyed an existence of unruffled privilege and contentment. So I guess she's saying however talented you are and however intelligent you are is not enough to protect you from fate and all that it brings in the future. So to pride ourselves on just being educated and being young and strong and maybe even coming from a good background will not protect us from the difficulties, problems, hardships, strains that life can and would bring eventually. In the Buddhist context, being born to privilege can be the result of negative karma. It can be the result of positive karma. And the reason for that is, if you're born to a life of privilege, where everything is given to you, handed to you, you may develop a sense of, well, everything is easy. I don't have to struggle much. Why do I do something for others? Why do I do something and try it? And if I fail, if I don't succeed, if I don't make it, it doesn't matter because I have a cushion to fall back on. We can have that kind of thinking so that we really work hard using our family background, our connections, name, wealth, fame if we have, education, whatever we have, to succeed further, more. But to succeed from ourselves, not from our family. I repeat, to succeed from ourselves, not our family. You see, having a big car, having a famous name, having a great education and branded items and living in a beautiful penthouse anywhere in the world or several places in the world doesn't mean we are successful, because it is not something we have actually in this life earned. It was something given to us. Albeit in the Buddhist doctrine, you created the causes for it. So let me continue. Although you have created the causes for it, was the causes from a positive standpoint or negative? If it's from a positive standpoint, then all that's been given to you that makes you privileged, you will do something more with it. You will do something bigger with it. You will do something more beneficial with it. How? Because you know that no matter how hard you work, if it's not successful, you can keep trying because you have a cushion. Now, from another standpoint, the other side of the coin is, if you've been handed things and given things and you come from a life of privilege and everything has been relatively easy. And basically, I guess privilege is, the secret here is not how much you got, is that when you were growing up, you basically did not have to worry about your mainstay, about your life, about your education, about your expenses, that someone took care of it. So if it came from a negative standpoint, a negative cause, then it would be that because of this, if I may, easy life, because of this privilege of not having to ever struggle for what you need, that you become complacent, that you maybe sometimes even become arrogant, or sometimes you just become claustrophobic, that you lock yourselves within this world in your mind and you just eat and you enjoy and you travel and you exist only for yourself. So that is a clear sign that the wealth and the privilege that you were born into was a result of your negative karmic disposition. Some people may think, well, you know, if I have all this money and I have all this wealth and I have all these cars and houses, that I would be happy. Well, you know, happiness is subjective. There are people in privileged positions that suffer tremendously quietly on their own. If I may say so with respect, someone like Princess Diana. You know, that's the first person that comes to mind, and I'm not penalizing her in any way. And there are people who are in privileged positions that do incredible things for others. And they just help. Example, the Princess of Thailand, the unmarried princess, her name slips my mind at this moment, who uses her wealth and her position and her background to serve the poor, the poverty-stricken, the difficult. And she dresses very simple, she's very modest, highly respected in Thailand. I can't comment anymore because I don't have the background more than that, what I've learned when I was there. Anyway, my point is that what you get and what you experience, and in this case we're using the example of privilege, can be the result of both bad and good, or positive or negative karmic dispositions. So simply to be rich doesn't mean it's good or bad. So I guess the mode in which you exist and what you do with it determines whence it came from. So therefore, what we need to realize is that we can take this example and apply it in every situation in our lives. So therefore, some of us who are born into difficulties and poverty develop qualities that bring us to the top and that inspire other people to come to the top. That would be definitely, being born in a poverty or difficult situation would be the result of positive karma, I would assume, I would guess. So therefore, I like what she says here. I like it very much. Let me continue. However, the fact that you are graduating from Harvard suggests that you are not very well acquainted with failure. You might be driven by fear or failure. You might be driven by fear of failure quite as much as a desire for success. Indeed, your conception of failure might not be too far from the average person's idea of success. So how high have you flown already, or already flown? So your concept of failure might be another person's concept of success, meaning, well, you were out to make $20 million, but you failed and made $10 million instead. But you know what? The guy down the street would have been more than happy to have made $10 million because his concept of success is 10 million, whereas yours was 20, but you failed and made 10. And I find that a very interesting way of looking at things, because that's how we should all look at things. That our failure that we have put on ourselves may not necessarily be failure, may not necessarily be the end of the world. Because everybody's hopes, dreams, and desires, and wishes, and visions are very different. So what we have failed in could be another person's success. And I find that very deep, and I find that very meaningful, because in times where we are self-deprecating and we are not happy with ourselves, we become depressed, and then from that comes depression. We can overcome that by saying, hey, you know, what I've achieved is not so bad, because it's not what I actually wanted, it's not what I actually aimed for. But it's halfway there. It's 1/3 the way there. It's 1/5 the way there. Because if this other person had that failure, it would be success. So what we need to do is we need to think carefully and say, look, let's look at it from another objective. And you know, it's not mind games. It is mind exercises. It's ways to exercise your mind to look at things differently, to pull yourself out. Not that you're depressed. Ultimately, Ms. Rowling says, we all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes failure. But the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it. The world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria of failure if you let it. So I think it is fair to say that by any conventional measure, a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale, she says. An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded, and I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain, without being homeless. The fears that my parents had had for me and what I had had for myself had both come to pass. And by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I knew. Let me impose upon you to repeat that. Ultimately, We all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes failure. But the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it. If you let it. What's the answer? Don't let it. So I think it is fair to say that by any conventional measure, a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale. An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded, and I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. The fears that my parents had had for me and that I had had for myself had both come to pass. And by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I knew. Now I am going to stand here and tell you that Now I am not going to stand here and tell you that failure is fun. That period of my life was a dark one, and I had no idea that there was going to be what the press has since represented it as a kind of a fairy tale resolution. I had no idea then how far the tunnel extended, and for a long time any light at the end of it was a hope rather than a reality. She says again, now I am not going to stand here and tell you failure was fun or is fun. That period of my life was a dark one. And I had no idea that there was going to be what the press had since represented as a kind of a fairy tale resolution. I had no idea then how far the tunnel extended, and for a long time, any light at the end of it was a hope rather than a reality. Haven't we gone through that? Where it has become so difficult that seeing or hoping or trying to visualize a light at the end of the tunnel is a reality. Because sometimes when we fall in such a horrible situation, which I have gone through many times, you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel as a reality. You just see it as hope. You just hope it could happen. You just wish it could happen. You just pray and do pujas and mantras that it could happen. That you don't even think it could be a reality. What's the difference between, in this case, hope and reality? Hope is distantly wishing it could be reality, but ultimately believing it couldn't be. Whereas reality is when you say, okay, I'm in such a horrible situation, but you know what? That light at the end of the tunnel is my reality. I'm going to get there, and I'm going to work hard. I'm not going to play any mind games. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to avoid. I'm not going to live a life of avoidance of what's happening to me or what has happened. But I'm going to live my life in the reality of what has been presented to me, no matter how harsh and difficult, and to work my way up. So my commentary, my thinking on this is that I think it's very deep what she says, that look, when you're that down, and I was that down many, many, many times in my life, even after becoming ordained as a monk, many times. You just cannot believe how poverty-stricken I have been in my life. That I agree with her, that to think the light at the end of the tunnel could be a reality. I didn't think that at those times. I did not think at those times that there was a light at the end of the tunnel that would be my eventual reality. But what I thought was, we have to have hope. We have to believe. We have to look at something, a light in the darkness, in a huge dark room. Everything is just so dark, and there's a little white light in a corner somewhere, and it's not enough to illuminate the room, but there is a light in the room. To think that that can illuminate the whole room never crossed my mind often when I went through my difficulties in the past. And so, if I can go back in time and go through those difficulties again and think to myself, you know what? That light can light up the room. and I'm going to make it light up. It would have changed my life. I think I would have achieved what I wanted to faster, and the bigger things that I wish to achieve in this future would have manifested sooner. I guess it's just a change of attitude. So we can choose that the light at the end of the tunnel is going to be just a hope, or we make it a reality by working hard, by being honest, by struggling, by accepting the humiliations, and not being angry, and letting go, and just saying, you know what, all the things that I've been told, all the things that I know that I need to do, I just got to do it. And I just got to, no more ands, if, and buts, no more excuses, no more explanations, because, you know, explanations get us nowhere after it's been told more than 3 times. How many times can we explain to others why we cannot do something that we promised or we're supposed to do? How many times can we explain? How many times can we justify before our audience shuts off? Some audience will shut you off, just be cordial to you. Some audience will embrace you and wish you well. Some audience will totally ignore you and go away, disgusted. I mean, people are different. But it doesn't matter if they embrace us, they listen to us, or they go away. What matters is this is the experience that we have with our audience will be repeated again and again and again and again, as long as we see this light at the end of the tunnel as a hope and not a reality. So when you go toward it as a reality, you work towards it. You work towards it. Very deep, what she says here. I'm going to continue. Now I'm going to stand here. I'm going to repeat this. Now I'm not going to stand here and tell you that failure is fun. That period of my life was a dark one, and I had no idea that there was going to be what the press had since represented as a kind of a fairy tale resolution. I had no idea then and how far the tunnel extended, and for a long time, any light at the end of it was hope rather than a reality. So why do I talk about the benefits of failure, she says? Simply because failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. Simply because failure meant a stripping away of the inessential, not important things. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was. Wow. And I began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might have never found the determination to succeed in that one arena I believed I truly belonged. I was set free because of my greatest fear had been realized. And I was still alive. And I still had a daughter whom I adored. And I had an old typewriter and a big idea. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation of which I rebuilt my life. I'm going to have to reiterate that, what she said here, because it's so powerful. So why do I talk about the benefits of failure? She says, simply because failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and I began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. Wow. Failure means stripping away any of the essentials. So if you have failed, you strip away the inessentials. What are the inessentials? I presume explanations of why you failed. Justifications, or long ramblings, or pointing fingers at who to blame, what to blame, and the situation. And stop trying to live a life that you cannot live anymore. Stop trying to be who you can't be, who you pretended to be, or who you thought you wanted to be anymore. Because if your life was based on wealth, or material things, or money, then when you have failed, then you know what? You've got to stop living a life that as if you still had money, to put it bluntly. Similarly, if you are married or you had good friends and your friends went away, or you're not married, stop living a life that you're a happy married person. Accept the fact that perhaps you contributed to the failure, and to move on from that. So, failure means stripping away of the inessentials. What's essential? What's essential is you got to be honest with yourself and others. You've got to work double hard. You know, if you were working 3-4 hours a day before the failure, well, you got to work maybe 6 or 8 hours or 10 hours after your failure to make it again. And, well, you like to go golfing, you like to go clubbing, you like to go out, you like to drink, you like to go shopping. Well, those are inessentials when you have failed. You need to focus your energy on the essential. So therefore, that makes so much sense that if you want to make it again, or make it, you need to strip away at the inessentials in your life. And inessential is not your spirituality, it's not your friends, it's not the people who mean something to you. The inessentials are more about internals. The games, the illusions, the facade that we like to put up from our minds. And I feel stripping away at the inessentials is more pivotal if we look at it from an internal point of view. Of course, externally it's important. If we can't afford a certain thing anymore, then we don't buy it. If we can't support a certain item, we don't have it. And to stop thinking that if I have it, I would be happy. Because if you had it and you weren't happy, then having it again wouldn't make you happy. So therefore, stripping away at the inessentials is external and internal. But you know, everything external comes from the internal. And that's very powerful. This is very, very powerful. Just as, this is very powerful, this part. I like it. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was. That's so powerful. That's what Buddha tells us to do. That's what Dharma tells us to do. That's what the wise, the philosophers, the scholars, the great women and men of the past tells us to do. That's what the Vajrayana tells us to do. Vajrayana Tantra tells us to do. To stop pretending to ourselves that you are anything than what you are. And she says it here. And I continue. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might have never found the determination to succeed in the one area I believed I truly belonged. I was set free because of my greatest fear had been realized. Wow, while I was alive. She says that she was set free because her greatest fear had been realized. And I agree, because when I think back now, all the fears that I have and all the insecurities that I had in my life pretty much had been realized. And I was set free because, you know what? Once you come across that, nothing else is bad anymore. There's nothing left to scare you. There's nothing else that would frighten you. Look, if your fear is having a green room, okay, that's your biggest fear in life. I mean, let's make a very simple example. If your biggest fear in life is to have a green room, you know, like, oh my God, the room is green, and you know, I feel like a caterpillar on a leaf, and I don't want to be a caterpillar on a leaf. I don't want to be an insect on a leaf, so I don't want to have a green room. Please don't make a green room for me. And you will have a yellow room, a beige room, a red room, a brown room, a blue room, but you can't have a green room. But you know, and that's your fear. So you, even while you're in your yellow room, in your red room, you're still not enjoying yourself because you're in mortal fear of potentially having a green room. And so what happens is when someone, out of the goodness of their hearts, gives you a green room and says, you know what, this is really good for your contemplations, and green is the best color for the eyes according to scientists and doctors. And in nature, the most prevalent color in wildlife is green, so it's really good for your eyes. So I've given you a green room. Oh my God, I've got a green room. I've got to live in a green room. Here comes the caterpillar. So When you sit in this green room and you realize it does help your eyes do feel better. It feels rested. You feel calm. And you can add other colors. Your TV set can be white or black. You can put, white or black shelves. You can put, purple shelves. You can have white sheets. You can have brown sheets. You can add other colors in the green room that the room is not as green anymore. And then when you sit back and say, hey, I like my green room. What was the big deal? I added some more colors there, and you know what? I don't even see the green anymore. The curtains are not green. The shelves are not green. The furniture is not green. The sofa is not green. The tables are not green. The carpet's not green. And I hardly see any of this green room. What was I scared of? And now, you know what? I can live in any room I want, any color, because I can change it. It's in my hands. And if I don't like it, I can repaint it. What was I in fear of all these years? And so when I read this is kind of what pops into my mind, that you know what? Because she says, because my greatest fear had been realized and I was still alive. That's very important, while I was still alive. And I still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. Wow. When she hit rock bottom, that became the solid foundation of which Miss Rowling rebuilt her whole life. Because she had realized her fears, which was, look, everything I assume with respect that British society says you should have to be happy is marriage, kid, a nice job, executive perks, wealth, a country estate. And another greatest fear was that our parents had was not to be in poverty. And all of that had been realized. All her greatest fears had been realized. Now there's nothing else to fear. There's nothing else to be scared of. There's nothing else left that can frighten this powerful woman. She had been set free. Wow. Truth does set us free, no matter how cliche that sounds. Truth does set us free. And when I read this, it's kind of like I wrote it, but not so well, of course. I mean, I can speak it, but I can't write that well. I guess me not writing well is kind of a green room. We all have our little green rooms. Now, well, I have my computer, and I have big dreams too. And if she can do it, I guess I want to do it too. You might never fail on the scale I did, she says, but some failure in life is inevitable. It is impossible to live without failing at something. No matter how good you are, you're going to fail at something. Unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all. In which case you fail by default. Failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. My goodness, that one line should be put up on a huge banner and flown all over the world and put up on every building. Everywhere where people can see this, listen to this. Failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. Failure never gave her the inner security that she attained by passing examinations. I guess the inner security that we seek will not be attained by our scholastic achievements. That does not mean don't go for it. Inner security will not be achieved by wealth or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or parents or a nice house or having a lot of money in the bank. That inner security can never be achieved. But you know what gave her her inner security? And I agree again, because as I said, she wrote down exactly what I felt. Failure gave her that inner security. My failure in the past many times in my life, with friends, with projects, with my Dharma work, my failures in the past gave me an inner security. What's that inner security? And I'm going to say it. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen to us? It's happened. What else can happen? It's not over till it's over. I mean, nothing else worse can happen unless I die. That would be the worst. And that I can't control or help. So what's the worst that can happen? And knowing that you have failed that badly and you have gone down that low should give you inner security. What kind of insecurity? It can't get any worse. That's it. So now it can only be up if we choose. It can only be up if we work towards it. And why wouldn't we want to work towards it? Who wants to be unhappy? Nobody. That is so powerful. It's like a mantra. Failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. I've met so many wealthy people who are insecure. I've met so many poor people who are insecure. The poor say they're insecure because of their poverty and they don't know when they're going to get their next meal from. The rich say they're insecure because they don't know when their wealth is going to be taken away and they have to keep working to secure it because they have to keep face, they have to look good. Society is expecting something of them. Their parents expect something. Their children expect something. And you know, when I meet the very wealthy, they have so much insecurities, it's unbelievable. When I meet the poverty-stricken, they have so many insecurities, which is believable. And nobody is free from this insecurity. Nobody. Not me. Not anyone. Unless you're a Buddha, I guess. And you can only feel security if you fail. And you hit rock bottom. Because if you don't hit rock bottom, you're going to still have some semblance of that insecurity. Because you know what? You don't know what's below that. And you know that you can fall even lower. But if you can't fall any lower and there's nothing else to fall, if you're at the bottom at that well, not halfway, if you're halfway down that well, if you fell off the top of the land, you fell into a well, and you know, you fell halfway down the net, let's say you got caught, the well, let's say you got caught by a net halfway down. You don't know how deep the rest of the well is. It could be 2 feet, it could be 20 feet, it could be 90 feet. But if you fall to the bottom of that well, that's the bottom. There's nothing else. So to fail severely and all the way and just everything is gone, as Miss Rowling has experienced, gives you security. So embrace your failures, small and big. Embrace your problems. Embrace your fears. And come out of it by being strong, working hard, honest, putting extra hours, removing all the essentials in your life. And then when you rebuild yourself this time around, it will be like being in that green room. Because you are not going to be afraid anymore. You are not going to fear anymore. And you will have a sense of peace and a sense of placidity, like a still lake, because you have gone down to the depths of the lowest of the low and you came up and there's nothing else you can experience. My example again, falling all the way to the bottom of that well, not halfway, not caught by a net halfway and not knowing what's below. Failure, big and small, gives us inner security. Avoiding failure, avoiding losing a face, only strengthens our insecurity and fears. That's wisdom. The knowledge that you have emerged wiser and stronger from setbacks means that you are ever after secure in your ability to survive. You will never truly know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tested by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift, for all that is painfully won and has been worth more than any qualifications I've earned, she says. Let me repeat. The knowledge that you have emerged wiser and stronger from your setbacks means that you are ever after secure in your ability to survive. You will never truly know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tested by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift. For all that it is painfully won, and it has been worth more than any qualification I have ever earned. Again, wisdom feels like I'm reading Lamrim. Powerful, ennobling, and the truth. If you're so afraid of losing your relationship and you do everything to maintain it, in most cases you lose it. Because your relationship is not built on something deeper and more, it's built on high maintenance. So it's not even a relationship. It's just a warm body next to you that you have labeled a relationship. That's just an example. Whatever you have, if it is tested by adversity and you come out of it, you know it's real. You know it's real. So given a time turner, I would tell my 21-year-old self that personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisitions or achievements. Wow, she's saying that, if she can turn time back, she would tell herself now who she is, and she would tell her old self, the 21-year-old, she would advise this, that personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisitions or achievements. Your qualifications, your CV are not your life. Life is difficult. Is not your life. Though you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse the two. Your qualifications, your CV, and your life. Though you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse the two. Life is difficult and complicated and beyond anyone's total control. The key word is total. Total control. And the humility to know that will enable you to survive its vicissitudes. I repeat, life is difficult and complicated and beyond anyone's total control. Why control it? And the humility to know that will enable you to survive its vicissitudes. So when you are humble and accepting because of your humility, because you've been humble, because you realize and you've accepted that you can't control, this humility will enable you to overcome even stronger challenges. I guess what she's saying, what I read into it, that's my subjective perception, is that when you're humbled by your difficulties and you're humbled by knowing that you can't control any of this, no matter how educated, how beautiful, how young, how old, how powerful you are, and that you're humble, you become humble and you accept it, that everything turns around, everything changes. Why does everything change? Because then, knowing that in the past you had to go through so much, although you thought you had control by education and money and savings and house and a collection of acquisitions of beautiful materialistic things, you thought that your acquisition of beautiful materialistic things would protect you from the difficulties and hardships you went through. Well, it didn't. So if it didn't protect you in the past, why would it protect you in the future? Isn't that very humbling? So when you accept that, you stop trying to acquire all these things in life that you think would give you security. You stop. And when you stop that, all the bigger challenges you're going to face in your life later on, you're going to overcome. You're going to face it head on. You're going to look at it straight in its eyes and grab the bull by its horns. And you're going to say, I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to overcome this. And you'll be ready for it. And the humbling experience is that no matter who you are, what you are, and how secure you make yourself, you will experience more vicissitudes, difficulties, and hardships. Because you, I, all of us cannot control life. So why control it by having a big car, lots of money in the bank? Why control it by getting names and titles and positions and a huge education and a big degree? Why control it? That doesn't control the problems and sufferings and difficulties that has come and that will come. Doesn't it sound like Lamrim? Doesn't it sound exactly like the Buddha's teachings? And this is what this powerful lady, filled with wisdom, has. It's incredible that throughout the whole lecture she doesn't talk about her book much at all. She doesn't talk about her success, but she talks about what got her there. Very powerful. Excuse me. So given a time turner, I would tell my 21-year-old self that personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisitions or achievements. Your qualifications, your CV, are not your life. Though you will meet people of my age and older who confuse the two. Life is difficult and complicated and beyond anyone's total control. And the humility to know that will enable you to survive its vicissitudes. Now you might think that I chose my second theme, the importance of imagination, because of the part it played in rebuilding my life. And that is not wholly so. Though I personally will defend the value of bedtime stories to my last gasp, I have learned to value imagination in a much broader sense. Imagination is not only the uniquely human capacity to envision that which is not, and therefore the fount of all invention and innovation. In its arguably most transformative and revelatory capacity, it is the power that enables us to empathize with humans whose experience we have never shared. Wow. And she's going to go on with that, and I'm going to repeat that because the rest of this is about that. And we need to understand her theme that she has placed down. Now you might think, I chose my second theme, the importance of imagination, because of the part it played in rebuilding my life, but that is not wholly so. Though I personally will defend the value of bedtime stories to my last gasp, I have learned to value imagination in a much broader sense. I have learned to value imagination in a broader sense. Imagination is not only the uniquely human capacity to envision that which is not, and therefore the fount of all invention and innovation. It is arguably most transformative and revelatory capacity. It is the power that enables us to empathize with humans whose experience we have never shared. So she's saying, don't be stuck with what you see. Don't be stuck with saying, well, that's the way things are. Don't just say, well, that's how it is. Too bad. That's the way God planned it. That's the way their karma said it would be. They're stuck. We're stuck. I'm stuck. That's the way it is. The power of imagination is to visualize what is not, but what can be. The power of visualization or imagination, the power of imagination is a uniquely human capacity to envision what is not, which is the fountainhead, which is the basis, the rock of Gibraltar, of all invention and innovation. Any invention in this world, any innovation in this world, past, present, and the future, came from a person's imagination. So one that does not have imagination, I guess you kind of make yourself stuck where you are. So the fount, or the rock of Gibraltar, or the foundation, or the root of all invention and innovation is imagination. To envision what could be, but is not. what can be, but not totally there. What you can do and have not done. This gives us hope. This gives us a light in the dark tunnel that can become a reality. And to work towards this, imagined, envisioned reality is what is uniquely a human capacity, and that we should fully embrace this perfectly endowed human body and mind. One of the greatest formative experiences in my life preceded Harry Potter, though it informed much of what I subsequently wrote in those books. This revelation came in the form of one of my earliest day jobs. Though I was sloping off to write stories during my lunch hours, I paid the rent in my early 20s by working at an African research department at Amnesty International headquarters in London. That's what she's saying here. There in my little office, I read hastily scribbled letters smuggled out of totalitarian regimes by men and women who were risking imprisonment to inform the outside world of what was happening to them. I saw photographs of those who had disappeared without a trace, sent to Amnesty by their desperate families and friends. I read the testimony of torture victims and saw pictures of their injuries. I opened handwritten eyewitness accounts of summary trials and executions of kidnappings and rapes. Many of my co-workers were ex-political prisoners, people who had been displaced from their homes or fled into exile because they had the temerity to speak against their governments. Visitors to our offices included those who had come to give information or to try and find out what had happened to those they had left behind. I shall never forget the African torture victim, a young man no older than I was at the time, who had become mentally ill after all that he had endured in his homeland. He trembled uncontrollably as he spoke into the video camera about the brutality inflicted upon him. He was a foot taller than I was and seemed as fragile as a child. I was given the job of escorting him back to the underground station afterwards. And this man, whose life had been shattered by cruelty, took my hand with exquisite courtesy and wished me future happiness. As long as I shall live, I shall remember walking along an empty corridor and suddenly hearing from behind a closed door a scream of pain and horror such as I have never heard since. The door opened and the researcher poked out her head and told me to run and make a hot drink for the young man sitting with her. She had just had to give him the news that in retaliation for his own outspokenness against his country's regime, his mother had been seized and executed. Every day of my working week in my early 20s, I was reminded how incredibly fortunate I was to live in a country with a democratically elected government where legal representation and public trial were the rights of everyone. Every day I saw more evidence about the evils humankind will inflict on their fellow humans to gain or maintain power. I began to have nightmares, literal nightmares, about some of the things I saw, heard, and read. And yet I also learned more about human goodness at Amnesty International than I had ever known before. Amnesty mobilizes thousands of people who had never been tortured or imprisoned for their beliefs to act on behalf of those who have. The power of human empathy leading to a collective action, save lives and frees prisoners. Ordinary people whose personal well-being and security are assured, joined together in huge numbers to save people they do not know and will never meet. My small participation in that process was one of the most humbling and inspiring experiences of my life. Unlike any other creature on this planet, humans can learn and understand without having experience. They can think themselves into others, people's places. Of course, this is a power like my brand of fictional magic that is morally neutral. One might use such an ability to manipulate or control just as much as to understand or sympathize. And many prefer not to exercise their imaginations at all. They choose to remain comfortably within the bounds of their own experience, never troubling to wonder how it would feel to have been born other than they are. They can refuse to hear screams or to peer inside cages. They can close their minds and hearts to any suffering that does not touch them personally. They can refuse to know. I might be tempted to envy people who can live that way, except that I do not think they have any fewer nightmares than I do. Choosing to live in a narrow spaces leads to a form of mental agoraphobia, and that brings its own terrors. I think the willfully unimaginative see more monsters. They are often more afraid. What is more, those who choose not to empathize enable real monsters. What is more, those who choose not to empathize enable real monsters. For without ever committing an act of outright evil ourselves, we collude with it through our own apathy of it. Powerful. So what is she saying? That humans have this powerful ability to envision, to put themselves in place of another, although we are not experiencing what they're experiencing, and feel their pain, feel their torture, feel their experience, and empathize, and go beyond empathy, and to do something about it. Because if we don't, we enable and collude inadvertently with monsters who perpetrate these acts on others. So when we stay quiet, and we do nothing, and we make no effort, although directly we didn't do anything bad, indirectly we are colluding. And we are allowing others to be monsters, others to harm themselves and others. It's very powerful. So when we have this kind of imagination where we can put ourselves in the place of others, example in the meditations of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, Chunjuk, by the great Master Shantideva, the whole meditation, the whole process of gaining the highest human potential is bodhicitta. The whole meditation behind gaining bodhicitta is to empathize with others, is to visualize other people's sufferings by visualizing oneself in all the 6 realms, by reading up on what you can experience in the 6 realms, by visualizing what's happening in the 6 realms and the sufferings and the difficulties and the incredible amount of pain that beings go through in the 6 realms of samsara, and to read about it, understand it, contemplate, meditate, and then to put yourselves in that place, and then to empathize with those who are already there or will go there, and from that develop a genuine sense of compassion, that if you don't do something about it, those who are there will stay there for a long time, and those who are going there will continue to go there. So to be able to imagine and envision ourselves in the places of others that we have not been or haven't been to in a long time, that we know would be grotesquely scary, would be unimaginably horrible, would be painfully frightening, makes us a better person. It's like people who eat meat but do not want to watch the animals being slaughtered. It's like people who want to have animals slaughtered but don't want to visit the butcher houses or the slaughter houses. It's like people who want to see the cooked meat on their plate, all nice and dressed up with gravy and sauces and little sprinklings of flowers garnered with mints and herbs, with beautiful candles and beautiful silverware and diningware laid out, but they don't want to see how that piece of meat got on their beautiful dining table. And, excuse me, when I see all these magazines with dining and these cooking shows and, how they prepare and baste and fry and cook and barbecue. And then they go into so much with the dining and their tables and how it's set and the candles and the plates and the placement of the forks and knives and all the energy put into using the forks and knives and the proper way and which fork, which knife, which spoon to use for what meal. They put so much energy into it. And then, the napkins, it's embroidered and it's a conversation piece. And the napkin rings, the design is 18th century, 19th century, it's Chinese, it's English. And all the details they put into that one meal is celebrating the death and the murder of an animal. If your meal is not vegetarian, of course. So what's the big hype about dining? What's the big hype about dining tables and dining ware and expensive china and antique silverware and the candelabra and the cooking and all that? What is the hype? You are in fact creating an altar, a shrine to the death and murder of millions of animals who need to be slaughtered mercilessly to get on your beautiful dining table. That becomes a conversation piece that you enjoy. So are you not colluding with monsters? Are you not colluding with the butchery and the murder? And to have magazines about it. And to have photographs about it. And to talk about it. And to look forward to these little dining parties. It's just an example of us not using our imaginations for something higher. Because if we can imagine the fear, the stench of the fear, the total fear, the total screaming of an animal being led to be butchered and the tears flowing from their eyes, how could dining be a positive experience? Or becomes an art. Or becomes something we live our lives for and waste our times on. How can it be? And that is applied to every situation. Furs, that is applied to, labor, using other people, suffering and taking advantage of the underprivileged for your wealth. Cheating people in the office, to make someone lose points or to make someone look bad or to make someone lose face so that you look good. It applies to everything, doesn't it? Because if we can imagine that if someone make us lose face and we have to suffer so much humiliation, would we like it? I wouldn't like humiliation, so why would I make the other person lose face? Why don't I just tell the truth or be nice and be skillful? Do I like to be deceived? Do I like to be cheated? Do I like to be told a lie? Do I like to be told something that's not true? Do I like someone pushing their faults onto me and making me take the blame because they're more powerful than me? Or they have more latitude to exercise that power on me at the moment? And how would I feel if I was that person who was innocent of blame and I was given the blame? And then the person who gave me the blame has eloquent, long explanations of why they push the blame onto others. And then that makes everything okay? It does not. It doesn't make me okay. It doesn't make that person okay. It doesn't make the action okay. It will never be okay, and it will never, ever be comfortable or sit well in anybody's minds. So the power of imagination in a human experience or as a human being is so incredibly valuable beyond any wealth in this world. When we can visualize ourselves in place of others and in their suffering and in their difficulties and in their problems, and that we would not want that for ourselves, and that would mean they don't want it for themselves, and therefore they and I are exactly the same. Because they and I are exactly the same, why would I do that to them? Why would I put my blame on them? I'll give you some examples. Why would I put my blame on them? Why would I abandon them? I mean, if we say we're going to work with you, we're going to do this with you, and then we don't show up, we don't meet up, we don't connect, we don't get together, you disappoint that person. So if you imagined yourself as that person who you had promised all these things to, that you're going to spend time with them, you're going to be with them, you're going to finish the work, and then you don't finish your work, you don't do it on time, you disappear, you just don't show up, you don't respond to SMS, text messages, you don't respond to your emails, you don't respond to phone calls, or you're blasé about it, or you're cold about it, or you're just very indifferent about it. How would you feel if you were the recipient of that type of response or lack of response? How would you feel? Would you feel like they were a traitor? That they made you feel no worth? Angry? Upset? Maybe increase your insecurities and fears of being abandoned? Would you feel that? Right or wrong is besides the point. If you would feel that, wouldn't they? If they can feel that, why would you do that to them? Why would you do that to them? And if you do that to them, then you are not exercising your incredible, powerful ability to imagine, gifted to you as a human being, that empowers you to empathize, that gives you the fodder to empathize. And by empathy, by empathizing, by developing a truly empathetic heart, you will not harm others. You will not make them lose face. You will lose face for them. You will not cheat them. You rather be short $1 to make sure they have $1. You will not burden them with your burdens. You will take the responsibility that is due to you and not push your responsibilities onto others. You will not slaughter them. You will not lie to them. You will not cheat them. You will not do any harm to them because you have imagined yourself in the same situation. And you can empathize with their pain, or pain to be as same as you would experience. And hence, you wouldn't do that. And it would just transform your mind and your life and your attitude and your actions. So empathy is very powerful. And in Shantideva's discourse, in the Bodhisattva, Chairavata, it says clearly, to begin our empathy, to repay the kindness of others to us, we start first by visualizing ourselves as our mother and the difficulties she had to endure with the 9 months in her stomach, that we gave her so much pain, discomfort, stretching her body. Then when she gave birth, the incredible amount of agony, and some even die in childbirth. Some become anemic or sick after giving children, yet they still love their children, yet their concern is still their children. And to start with that, and to have gratitude towards one's mother, if it applies. And then to extend that to one's father, extend that to one's uncle, aunt, and friends, and everybody around you, till we can imagine ourselves in their position and how directly and indirectly kind they have been to us. And that this kindness doesn't stop at just feeling empathy or having tears roll down our eyes, but it continues with, well, now I need to transform myself to repay their kindness. How is it that you can repay their kindness? By transforming yourself. Simple. When you don't harm anyone anymore, or your harm is less, at least in the beginning your harm is not so overt and gross, gross. It's more on a subtle level, which will take more time, that you've improved. So for all the things that other people have given you and helped you with and loved you and had hopes in you, you are returning their kindness by becoming a kinder person. And that's the goal of Dharma. That's the goal of religious practitioners or spiritual practitioners. That is a goal beyond Dharma and religion. That is a goal of a human being who has the capacity to be able to imagine and therefore develop empathy and care and develop some sort of feeling and some sort of mutual consensus of a suffering that is or can be avoided. Therefore, what Ms. Rowling is saying here is very powerful. It's very, very powerful. The power of imagination. And when we don't choose the power of imagination, she says here, I might be tempted to envy people who can live that way, who don't want to imagine other people's sufferings, who don't want to see the sufferings of peer into cages, or, they don't want to listen to other people's poor me stories or their sufferings and difficulties. They just don't want to know. They just lock themselves in their room and just very, very hedonistically enjoy themselves. If I may use the word hedonistic in a respectful way. And they refuse to listen. They refuse to pay attention. They refuse to acknowledge or to see or to get close. And, their idea of charity work is not get their hands dirty. The reason why she does not choose that way to avoid the suffering, and that she may even be envious of it, is because by living in that kind of space, it forms a mental agoraphobia, which means agoraphobia is a state where you're afraid to go outside of your house. You're just scared to death to go out. So what's mental agoraphobia? Of course, in the way she's using it, is you're afraid to go out of your shell, to go out of your imagined world, to go out of, and imagine to use it in a different manner in this case, to be scared and frightened, to go out of your perfectly constructed illusions of life. So a mental agoraphobia is not being able to go out of that mind. You don't want to see suffering. You don't want to see the problems of others. You don't want to hear about it. You don't want to know about it. You don't want to understand it. You don't want to go near it. You do not want to have anything to do with it. Because you're afraid to feel empathy. You're afraid to feel compassion. You're afraid that you will be morally bound, ethically bound to do something. And you don't want to do something. You don't want to do anything because you want to be in your own space. And that space can be envied. But in actuality, these people, she says, have the same fears. And it has their own terrors. The terror of the truth. The terror of seeing something for what it really is. So those who face reality, they look into cages of animals to be slaughtered. Terror arises. And those people who avoid looking into cages, terror arises. Either way, the terror and the fear will arise. So if it's either way, why not choose the more humanistic way, which is to face the terror, face the fear, and more than just face it, to do something about it. Because when you avoid it, you're not free. When you don't want to see it, although it exists, you are not free. You are not happy. You are living in a world made up of your own illusions, with parameters of your own limited imagination that will burst, that the bubble will break, that you will have to come out of it. You can make your room perfect and beautiful and air-conditioned and clean and wonderful and never leave it, and you think that your world is just that, and there is no suffering beyond. There's no suffering within and without. Or you know there's suffering without and you don't want to go out. You just stay in. Well, that has much more terrors. Because you know what's the biggest terror in life is when we avoid reality. And that's why we make our world so illusionary. Because we're actually scared. I'm scared. So because we're scared, we're in terror. So we've got to make our environment around us perfect. Because we are scared. Very profound. She says again, I might be tempted to envy people who can live that way, except that I do not think they have any fewer nightmares than I do. That's powerful. Is that when you avoid it, it's not that you have less nightmares. It's a different set of nightmares. She said they are more often afraid. What is more? Excuse me. Those who choose not to empathize enable real monsters. That means when you don't empathize, when you don't imagine yourselves in other people's places, you allow and collude inadvertently with people who are creating this type of suffering. So you may be in your room enjoying the art of dining and not wanting to, but inadvertently colluding with suffering. One of the many things I had learned at the end of the classics corridor down which I had ventured at the age of 18, in search of something I could not then define, was this written by the Greek author Plutarch. Listen to this Greek author. What we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. Plutarch says, what we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. Wow, that sounds exactly like from the pages of Lam Rim by Tsongkhapa, by the Buddha, by Atisha. That is an astonishing statement, yet proven 1,000 times every day of our lives. It expresses, in part, our inescapable connection with the outside world. The fact that we touch other people's lives simply by existing. The fact that we touch other people's lives simply by existing. But how much more are you, Harvard graduates of 2008, likely to touch other people's lives? Your intelligence, your capacity for hard work, the education you have earned and received give you a unique status and unique responsibilities. Even your nationality sets you apart. The great majority of you belong to the world's only remaining superpower. The way you vote, the way you live, the way you protest. The pressure you bring to bear on your government has an impact way beyond your borders. That is your privilege and your burden. Very powerful. I like that. That is your privilege and your burden. So when you can make a difference in other people's lives by empathizing, it is a privilege. And yet, simultaneously, it is a burden. Privilege and burden go hand in hand. They're lovers. They're yab-yum. They are male and female. They are yin and yang. They are day and night, moon and sun, the ocean and the sky. There are polarizations, yet they go hand in hand. Because if you can bring, for example, Dharma to others, it is a privilege. But it is a tremendous burden to bring Dharma to others. You have to absorb all their fears. You have to give them knowledge. You have to talk incessantly. You have to have the resources to bring them what they need. You have to sleep less. You have to earn more. You have to work harder. You have to push yourselves more. You have to overcome your fears and insecurities faster and quicker than everybody else around you. That is the burden. But it leads to a privilege. And the privilege is that you can make a difference in other people's lives. So if you want to make a difference in other people's lives, remember it comes together with its lover, its partner, burden. And if you don't want to be burdened, you will not enjoy the privilege. If you wish not to enjoy the privilege, then you will be part of the burden. So remember, working for others, charities, NGOs, religious, secular, bringing Dharma to others, bringing love to others, compassion, a message of spirituality, or a message of love and a message of empathy to others. It is a privilege if they accept and they understand, but it becomes a burden when they don't, and you need to work harder. But in the end, whether you avoid or you do, both will have its own nightmares. Both will have its own fears. Both will have its own setbacks and experiences. So why not choose the one that is more imaginative rather than the one that you disallow the power of your imagination, which from it arises empathy. If you choose to use your status and influence to raise your voice on behalf of those who have no voice, if you choose to identify not only with the powerful, but with the powerless, if you retain the ability to imagine yourself into the lives of those who do not have your advantages, then will not only be your proud families who celebrate your existence, but thousands and millions of people whose reality you have helped change. We do not need magic to change the world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better. Isn't that just so deep, yet so practical, yet so attainable? That, if you wish to identify yourself with just the powerful, the rich, the well-known, the famous, you have to be just as eager to make yourself identify with the powerless. So I guess some of these great lamas of Tibet who go out and meet the superstars and meet the rich and the businessmen and the successful and the scientists and all that, they meet all the powerful and famous people. I guess a mark of their spirituality is also that they meet with the people who are not. And they are able to reach both, and they are empathetic to both, and they can identify with both. So I guess a mark of a great person, a spiritual person, or an attained person, or someone who's just a good human, is one that can identify with those who have the power and those who don't. And if you, with all your privileges, can you imagine those without the privileges, the disadvantaged, and then you do something for them, which is what I wish to achieve in Kichara, and with my life and my friends, then not only will your families be proud of you, but thousands and millions of people around the world whose lives you will affect and change, they will celebrate your existence. They will celebrate you being you. And later, all your difficulties and pain and sorrow and everything you went through will be an inspiration to others. Maybe that is why very high attained lamas in Tibet are born into the most humblest, the most difficult, and the most problematic of families, and the most suffering of families. That they can feel those who are suffering, so when they mature and grow older and they meet the powerful and the famous, they are in touch with both. Perhaps that could be why. Perhaps. We don't need millions. We don't need magic to change the world, because we have it all inside of ourselves. Just change ourselves. Be empathetic. Every time you wish to harm, or you wish to throw your responsibility, or you wish to cheat or lie or damage someone, think how that person would feel. Think how you would feel if you were that person. And it's done over and over to you. To suffer 1,000 humiliations again and again, because you're in a position to receive the humiliations. And to give the humiliations because you're in a position that allows you to give it. So when you have a power of imagination, put yourself in their place, you will empathize and you will not do it. I'm nearly finished, she says. I have only one last hope for you, which is something that I already had at 21. The friends with whom I had sat on graduation day have been my friends for life. They are my children's godparents, the people to whom I've been able to turn in times of trouble, people who have been kind enough to not to sue me when I took their names for Death Eaters. At our graduation, we were bound by enormous affection, by our shared experience of a time that could never come again, and of course, by the knowledge that we held certain photographic evidence that would be exceptionally valuable if any of us ran for prime minister. So we hold photographic evidence of each other that could be used and that could be exceptionally valuable, she jokes, if any of us ran for prime minister who didn't have their clothes on. So today, I wish you nothing better than similar friendships. And tomorrow, I hope that even if you remember not a single word of mine, you remember those of Seneca, another of those old Romans I met when I fled down the classics corridor in retreat from career ladders in search of ancient wisdom. And Seneca says, as is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. I wish you all very good lives. Thank you very much. She concludes. Listen to that last paragraph. So today, I wish you nothing better than similar friendships. And tomorrow, I hope that even if you remember not a single word of mine, you remember those of Seneca, another of those old Romans I met when I fled down the classics corridor in retreat from career ladders in search of ancient wisdom. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. Very powerful. And it's so funny because when I was growing up, I was told that I have to get a really good education, and I have to get a degree, and I have to get a good job, and I have to get married, and I have to have kids, and I have to have sons, if you're Asian, and that they will take care of me when I'm old, and that if I get a good job, I'm going to enjoy my life because I can buy cars, and I can have houses, I can travel, and I can buy all the things that I want. And this is what was pounded into my head as I was growing up. That's what my step-parents had told me. And I think they told it from the goodness of their hearts. I think that's all they knew. So I don't resent it at all. But deep down inside of me, I said to myself, no, that's not what's going to make me happy. Because I didn't see them as happy. And all the people around me as happy. That's not going to make me happy. And, like Rowling's, I studied. I crammed in things. I didn't study to remember forever. I studied just to pass a test. And many times I didn't study and I still passed the test. Somehow I have a way with passing tests without having to study. And I'm sure many of us are guilty of the same, if I may. And, but I was very much into going to the local Dharma center. I was very much into reading books that I had borrowed from Carmen Kichiko or Anila down the street. And I would lock myself for hundreds of hours in my room, reading Dharma books, contemplating, meditating, doing my mantras, thinking, going for teachings, going for Dharma talks with my teacher. And I would just run away from the conventional studies and learnings that I was required to do. And I would just go for Dharma. Why? It wasn't in me. It wasn't a part of me. It's not in me to believe that degrees, position, power, and money would make me happy, even 40 years ago. I didn't believe that. I couldn't express it. I couldn't say it. And I still can't express it that well now, but Ms. Rowling has expressed it very well in her last paragraph. She's expressed exactly what I wanted to say in my context, but it's the same. So this is how it is. As is a tale, so is life. A tale is a story. So as a story, as is in a story, as in a story, as is a tale, so is life. Life is just a story. It's just a tale. And how long it is doesn't matter. But how good it was, what we've done with it really matters. And Miss Rowling has really summarized her life and her struggles and her learning and her wisdom and her ability to convey her wisdom to others, all condensed by this one line by the ancient Roman philosopher Seneca. And I find it quite amazing. Not her wisdom, not Seneca, and not what she said. I find it quite amazing that wisdom is wisdom. Whether it's said by Seneca, Rowling, Buddha, any great saints, Jesus, teachers, parents, elders, sadhus, swamis, gurus, wisdom is wisdom. And that wisdom is very, very simple, condensed into two, which she clearly highlights. One is the power of imagination. From the power of imagination, putting yourself in other people's places, you get rid of your own fears and insecurities, and you stop hiding. You just stop hiding and you come out. When you come out and you stop hiding, you can change other people's lives just by existing. Just by existing. And to not count your life by what you have accumulated or acquired doesn't bring happiness at all. And to be real to yourself and to face it. And so the first one is the power of imagination. The second one is the power of failure. To fail on a small scale, on a medium scale, on a big scale. And to understand the failure and to embrace the failure and to embrace yourself through that failure. By shirking off, taking off all your illusions and delusions of who you think you are, but to face who you are and to move on from there. So right now, if you're someone who always doesn't finish your assignment on time, you push your responsibilities on others, or you're stingy, or you don't want to face pain or difficulties, that's who you are. Embrace it. That's who you are. That's who you are. Don't celebrate it. Accept it. Don't advertise it and use that as an excuse, but to face it and say, that's who I am right now. And that's who I need not be. That's who I need not be tomorrow or the day after or next year. And to work towards it daily, hourly, by the minute. That every time you want to blame someone, you blame yourself and you say it. And every time you want to hide into your own little reality, you face it that, you're in this kind of circumstance, if it's dire or not. If it's difficult or not. And to stop avoiding all that you're afraid of. Because, as she says, and it's true, that you may envy those who avoid pain and suffering and difficulties. You may envy, but you shouldn't, because they have their own. And from avoiding and hiding, a whole set of new nightmares, a whole set of new terror, a whole set of new mind sufferings arise. How does it arise? Because you're avoiding reality. Okay. Well, when I read this speech by Miss Rowling, I was very moved. And I was just amazed by the wisdom she wrote. And I have become her fan. And I really admire where she comes from and who she has become. And she has become an inspiration, not because of her books, but fulfilling her dream of writing, which took her decades to fulfill, but she fulfilled it. And that dream of doing what she wanted, or what was close to her heart, irregardless of what other people thought and said, is the inspiration. So she may be very wealthy now and powerful and influential and all that stuff, but you know what? She became that way because she embraced her failure. And I guess that's the message for all of us, for me. I will be reading her speech again and again from time to time. I will keep it in my sadhana book, in my prayer book. And I'm going to read it over and over again, because it's as if I got a writer to write what I've been feeling. I feel as if I met up with Miss Rowling, and if you want to meet me, Miss Rowling, you're going to have to contact JP or Ben Kui and get in line, because I am quite busy. But if it's as if I'm talking, I have spoken to Miss Rowling, and she has written down what I've been feeling for years, what I have said, what I've taught, what I've expressed to other people, what I have been knowing. It's inside of me deep, and it's burning. It's as if she wrote down exactly what has been burning inside of me for decades. And when I read her succulent, beautiful, very, very deep writing, philosophical in fact, it touches a chord, it's a beautiful reminder, and it's also an affirmation. And no matter who you are, we all need affirmations from time to time. I do. So I wanted to share this with you, and I'm gonna post her speech, which is a copy written to Miss Rowling herself, so please excuse me, this is not for commercial reasons. I'm going to post her beautiful speech, which I took from the Harvard Gazette, on my blog, along with this video, and my own thoughts about her writing. And my true wish is that it will benefit someone. I hope a lot of people. And anything I've said is not meant to offend, or to put down, or to denigrate, or to degrade. It is just examples. It is not to point fingers. I hope you will listen to this tape a few times, and I hope you will read what she has written a few times, and I hope you will continue to read it again and again, because it is extremely ennobling. Such adversity and pain and problems, and being, in her words, in the lowest form of poverty in Britain, where she wasn't homeless, and she can come and give a speech that is pure wisdom. She has learned, and her poverty was the result of her positive prayers and karma from another time, because it's made her into a very powerful being, and through this powerful being's thoughts and speech, she will affect many. I wish her a long life, and I wish her health and continued success, and I wish everybody who sees this tape the same. Today's explanation might have been a little long, but I feel it merits careful explanation and careful thoughts and careful time. I guess that's the most precious commodity we have to use toward our spiritual awakening, is time, and how we spend it. If it's spent for others, or if it's spent for ourselves. And if it's been a life of spending time for ourselves, use the power of imagination. Thank you very much. I wish everybody well.